Hello, everybody. Lorenz Dean here on behalf of Don Devine Media, and this is a Coliseum Culture. Well, can't say Legends Profile, but this is actually. Hey, what are we going to call this? What should we call this?
Oh,
What do you
I
think?
I'm kind of liking, maybe Coliseum Corner, something like that. Coliseum Connection. A lot of great tag
Col-
teams have the connection name to it.
Coliseum Connection. Okay, okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a Coliseum Connection, and I'm Lorenz Dean, and this is my co-host Larry Mormon. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Lorenz. How you been, my friend?
Good, 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 man. Shooting the breeze. We was reminiscing and stuff like
Absolutely.
that before this. It's good touching bases back with you.
Absolutely.
Um,
I've had so much fun working with you in the past. I'm really looking forward to doing this with you tonight. So this is gonna be awesome.
finally got you. Finally
Yes.
got you.
Finally, yes.
Oh man. So what we doing here? We're doing is we're reminiscing as far as to the fans that's going to be watching this. We're reminiscing over the glory days of wrestling, the golden era, the times of. It's a wink and a nod to Coliseum home video. Back in the days when you couldn't afford the pay-per-view event and you waited for that to come out. What was it? It took like a month before like an event happened. This week it took a month
No.
before it hit the video stores.
Probably more than that. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
normal movies felt like it took like 8 months or so to hit VHS. So wrestling might have done it a little bit quicker.
Right.
But no, it definitely took a while. And a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here actually predates, well, definitely predates pay-per-view, even predates a little bit closed circuit, because I don't think we've hit WrestleMania yet
No.
with any of these videos. So yeah,
Yep.
this was really
Still
kind of the
have.
only way to see, unless you were in the local market, this is really the only way you were able to see other matches. And I remember being like, oh, what is this? Where is this location? What is this far off land? Oh, it's Jersey. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And if you didn't have access to, I don't know if you remember the magazines back in the days, the tape trader section where you had a videotape and I had a videotape, and it was more of the. Can you imagine the trust factor? Like I didn't know you from a hole in the wall, and I would send you a tape, and granted, you'll send me a tape right back. We watch it. I copy yours. You copy mine, and then we
80s were
return it.
weird. 80s were a lot easier to deal with. I mean, I was too young to be able to participate in that, but I
Uh,
know of what you're talking about.
yep.
Later on when I went to indie shows, it's more the tape selling, kind of seeing those, not even bootlegs, just, recordings and stuff. And real quick, I remember early on in my life, because I didn't have cable, I was actually introduced to wrestling through my uncle who used to show me the MSG shows when they used to air them on the MSG channel. I think a friend of his used to put them on tape, and then he'd show them to me, and I'd borrow some, and that's how I got into wrestling. Actually, was through my uncle, and I haven't looked back since.
And those fans back then, I don't know if you remember back in the era in the 80s, they were like rabid fans. A lot of
Oh,
people used to consider ECW rabid fans. I'm like, no, you need to check out the 80s as far as in Madison Square Garden. They was berserk.
it's a different type of animal. With no disrespect to either one, like ECW was, yeah, they were all into it, but like by then you knew what was going on. Like we all knew what it was, but during those 3 or 4 hours, we suspend disbelief. That's the whole idea of professional wrestling, sports entertainment,
Correct.
whatever you want to call it. The
Correct.
dinosaurs aren't real, but Jurassic Park is an amazing movie. So, that's what it is. But yeah, during the 80s, especially in the Garden, when that curtain was not pulled back, and before John Stossel got slapped right across the eardrum,
Mhm.
exposing the business, yeah, people were definitely rabid for a different reason, because they were trying to go after these heels and the bad guys and cheer on the good guys and stuff. So it's a bygone era. It's an era we'll never see again, but it was fun to live through.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. So what are we covering today? We're covering uh, a volume of series that came out underneath the Coliseum home video brand, and it was called The Best of the WWF. It was at least 20 volumes. We're going to start off with volume number one. So let's get it started, shall we?
All right, let's do it.
All right. So as soon as you pop in that VHS tape, hopefully you didn't have to do too much tracking on it with those little white lines and stuff like that. You didn't have to worry about that. All right.
Forgot about those. I was like, auto tracking was a lot better, but yeah, no. Once it got in there and then it worked, and made sure you rewound first.
Yeah,
Just hit
yeah.
play and on we went.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So you get greeted with what? The classic WWF blue and yellow logo, that blue yellow stamp, as far as
Classic.
that's at the home video series. All right. And then after that, you get that. I don't know if you remember Star Wars with the writings going up the screen and stuff
Oh,
like that.
for 5,000 years,
Yeah.
man, something or other. Started talking about like the Greek. I remember. Oh, I can't recite it, but I remember it vividly. And the music, like did it, like that quick pace. Oh, Coliseum home video, man. That was the stuff back then.
Oh man, oh man. There you go. So then after that, after you have the Star Wars setup with the writings and the history about professional wrestling and stuff like that, we get greeted with a young Vince McMahon as far as in the control booth area, this area right there. Um, and he starts introducing the matches that's on the videotape, the volume series as such. Okay, first match we got Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant in a handicap match versus Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, and Big John Studd. Now, this match was very interesting to me, especially. I don't know if you remember back in the days, like right now they show the wrestlers coming out as far as after the curtain wise, but back then in the 80s, you see them leaving the dressing room and walking down that long hallway. And I don't know if you remember in that particular match, you'll see Adrian Adonis. In that match, you'll see Adrian Adonis, Big John Studd, and Dick Murdoch walking down the hallway, and you see a young Vince McMahon standing on the side giving them last minute instructions and stuff. And you see both of them just turning around, receiving last. But back then, you just like you probably didn't even know it was Vince McMahon standing there.
Never put two and two together. And I remember, and you're right, because always that I remember more the iconic walk in the garden, because you can tell that garden hallway, the turn, and then the entrance for the garden. But you're right, this was, I forgot where this was. It wasn't in the garden, but it still had that hallway walk. And even back then, you would think that Vince would want not to show that part. You can show him walking out, but not like the interaction. But it was definitely, it made it feel real at that point.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
not even
yeah,
knowing who the players really were, or, what they
yeah.
did, I should say.
Oh yeah, it's like a way that Vince McMahon took us behind the curtain, literally behind the
Exactly.
curtain, so to
Exactly.
speak. So yeah, so now they enter the match, and then we have the introduction of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. There's a promo that happens between Andre and Hogan as far as with Mean Gene Okerlund, and Hogan talks about that he doesn't want Andre the Giant. Well, Andre the Giant is no longer known as the Giant; he's known as the Boss. And the story behind that, I've talked to a couple of the wrestlers back in that era. They said that they always considered Andre as the boss because every time he seen you, he was like, "All right, boss. All right, boss." So he was known as the boss, so to speak. So yeah. So after that happens, oh
And
yeah,
to have
right, right.
and to have Hogan kind of again pull the curtain back a little bit to give like that locker room nickname out, letting people know who it, and it was also weird, just to see kind of almost Hogan almost like conducting the interview, kind of sort of was a little weird, a little odd, because back then there was no writers, so they were basically winging it.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, no, to hear Hogan refer to Andre as the boss, um, very interesting. Nowadays, even looking back on that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So basically, I mean, we have Andre and Hogan obviously wins the match. Um, I gave this match like I'd say a 4 star, 4 out of 5 star match. Um, it was one of those. It was one of the things that was memorable in that match is when Andre was in the ring. I believe he was in the ring with Big John Studd, and him and Big John Studd had issues in real
They did
life.
not like each other. No,
Yeah, and it,
Andre
it
did not
started.
like having another giant around.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
It started off over something so simple as
Yep.
far as somebody said, "Oh yeah, here's another giant," and Andre was like, "He's not the giant. I'm the only giant." There you go. There goes the beef right there. So it was him and John Studd in the ring, and Andre started proceeding hitting him with a battering ram. Then you
Yes.
had Dick Murdoch come in there. Then you have Adonis come in there. Then it became Andre giving all three of them a battering ram. Then you see Hogan
Hogan kind
behind
of
Andre.
pushing Andre into him. Yep. Yep. Hogan the
That was
caboose.
Oh yeah, that was the memorable part for me as far as in that match. I mean, what stuck out for you as far as in that one?
Little things for me. First of all, with Hogan and Andre walking out to the ring, I found this one odd because this took place in July of '84. So Hogan's already champion at this point, but he did not walk out with the title. And I remember that happening a couple times, like during like non-title matches, or like if a singles champion was involved in a tag, like they left the belts, I guess, in the back. Which there's some like little things like that I always thought was kind of odd and interesting. Another part about this match is it was that era that wasn't strictly yellow and red for Hogan. He was wearing all white in this match. And I remember growing up, I had like the LJN, the 6-inch LJN plastic figures, like the
Mhm.
iconic WWE figures. And I'm always gonna say WWE. I know it's not WWE, but I don't like that panda, so I'm just gonna refer to it as WWE. And I had like a Hogan in all white. And even back then, because I don't remember seeing much of Hogan in white, except on this Coliseum video. So I always thought that was kind of cool to see, just him like kind of rocking different colors, which we'll see him do later on as well. But otherwise, as far as the match, it's odd to call it a handicap match with Andre involved in the match. Um, but I give it like the only reason why I would give it like a 3.5 stars is that I feel like they might have been able to do just a little bit more as far as between Andre and Stud. They did some stuff with Andre and Stud, but I feel like they probably could have done a little bit more. But the interactions, kind of that goofiness, like you said, with the battering ram in the corner, that was very entertaining. And if you watch at the end of the match, basically Andre finishes the match with almost Hogan's finisher. Andre gives the big boot, and I think he gave what looked like a leg drop. And that's what got them the win and got them the victory.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I don't know if you remember the theme song that Hogan came out to, "Eye of the Tiger." That was
Yes.
yeah, that was during the time I think was it fresh off of him doing the Rocky movie, if I'm not mistaken, or
Um, no, maybe not that. No, Rocky probably came out a couple years prior, Rocky 3. Plus,
right?
Hogan was
Okay,
fired over that. So if
correct,
you remember,
correct.
yeah, because he was a heel originally. But and I don't mean to school you. I apologize if I come off
Oh
schooling you.
no,
I don't.
please.
No disrespect, please.
Oh no,
Or
please.
I mean no disrespect. But no, and mostly because probably because they weren't doing original music just yet. And then also remember when Real American ended up coming out, Hogan didn't have Real American originally. It was the U.S. Express, Rotundo and Wyndham who I
Ah,
think if I mean now WWE does amazing with revisionist history. Don't get me wrong. So, but I'm sure if you were in the Garden for WrestleMania 1, I'm pretty sure uh Rotundo and Wyndham probably came out to Real American, and Hogan
wow.
probably came out to like that Hulk music that they did.
Dun, Hulk,
Yeah,
dun,
exactly. Yeah,
Hulk.
yeah, yeah. Yep.
Uh.
Um, maybe it's been a long time since I heard the original recordings of
Oh,
WrestleMania 1, but still, yeah, no, Eye of the Tiger, in an era that just didn't have a lot of theme music anyway. So it was, I think they just because that song gets you jacked up. So I think that's really why they did it.
right, right, right. Okay. Oh, and it's funny that you said Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo came out to it. Who did Barry Windham look like to you? A young
A
version
young
of
Hogan, it does. It did look like Hogan, yeah, just with more hair, thankfully for
just with more.
For
There you
Wyndham,
go.
yeah.
There you go. Ay, ay, ay. All right. So moving on to the second match, we got the Fabulous Moolah versus Wendy Richter. Um, we have the Fabulous Moolah in the locker room with me and Gene Oakland. With as
Captain
far as her
Lou,
manager, Captain Lou Albano,
yeah,
cutting a what I call a superstar Billy Graham type of promo as far as for
he
for
does, yeah.
Moolah. Yeah.
Captain Lou's all over the place. He always was. At least as a heel, he was.
Yeah.
And that wide-eyed look of his.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then Moolah just kind of working her way through.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now here's the interesting thing about that. Well, the match this is I remember in the beginning. I don't know if you mentioned this prior to before we started this episode that a lot of these things predated as far as WrestleMania. This was before WrestleMania and stuff.
Yes, this would have
This was
been July of '84.
Yep,
If I'm
perfect
looking at it correct.
example
Yep.
right here of what you was talking about. So the reason I brought that up, a lot of people remember the first screw job as far as being between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart.
Hmm.
Actually, no. The very first screw job was between the Fabulous Moolah and Wendy Richter,
It
and
was.
this was actually the beginning of it. If I'm not,
It was just so well. This would have been Rick. This should have been, I believe, Richter's first. Well, I think it's her only, really. No, her first. Championship win, because at this point,
uh,
Moolah's already had the championship for like 20 something years. In fact, someone correct. I forgot. It was either. I think it was during that promo. I think it was Captain Lou. Like was like, oh, Fabulous Moolah champion for 12 years. And Moolah's like, no, 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 no. I've been champion for like 20 something years. And even like Captain Lou, oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So, Moolah's had this epic run, and then here comes Wendy Richter with Cyndi Lauper. So we're getting the start of that rock and roll connection that helped WWE big time in the 80s. And you're right, this is the start of that, because Wendy Richter goes up, really, the ending of this match, so 80s. It was so
yeah,
80s. And yes, look, you absolutely could have gotten away. You did get away with it back then. Today, people would be up in arms. But be that as it may, and we'll talk about that in a moment. This is definitely something. You're right. That original screw job was Wendy, and really between Wendy Richter and Vince McMahon, just like it was between Bret Hart and
correct,
Vince McMahon. And
correct,
actually,
correct.
Wendy even talks about it on the Netflix documentary briefly,
Mhm.
because they interview her. And yeah, it was not this match, but later on when it was against the Spider Woman, who ended up
Yeah,
being Moolah. And
Moolah,
yeah,
yeah.
Richter just wouldn't go over. So, and look, you know what? On those two screw jobs, I'm not gonna lie, I side with Vince on both of them, because it is, yeah, that's Vince's property. That's not their property. You know what? And we could do a whole nother podcast or a show about me and my dislike of Bret Hart at this point, but that's for another time down the road.
Bitter, isn't he, man?
The
Bitter,
most
dude.
bitter human being on the planet, and sadly, it all stemmed from, which is a shame. It all started with Owen, with that tragedy with Owen Hart. And at that point, Brett just made himself feel like he's bigger than the business, and nobody's bigger than the business. So, but again, that's
Yeah,
for another time.
yeah, yep,
Um,
yep, yep, definitely.
but
So
yeah, go ahead.
the the match starts off with an arm drag. Ola gives Wendy Richter an arm drag, I believe. Then they go back and forth at it. Here's the funny thing, right? We and this is like a little ha ha wink wink to the referee here. They coined Danny Davis as being the original heel referee, but if you ask me personally, I think the referee for that match, he was the original heel referee, because you seen Cyndi Lauper outright. Yes,
Yes,
she literally hits Moolah right in front of the referee, and the
right.
referee lets it go. And I'm like, what the what?
I mean, the ref could have held Moolah with Richter at that point. The ref could have told you what was on Cyndi Lauper's hat, her design. That's how close he was to her. Yeah, I saw that, and I was waiting. I was waiting for Monsoon to say something, but he didn't. To his
He
credit,
did.
he didn't. But yeah, I saw that. I'm like, what is this?
Oh my god. And then it ends off with a controversial win. I call it that way. Would it be what was the move? It was like a German suplex
It
type of.
was, yeah, it was basically a German suplex, right? I'm trying to remember exactly how it wasn't really a roll up, but it was
Right.
basically a German suplex where all four shoulders were on the mat. Even
Hmm.
though technically Wendy was covering Moolah, and then at the last second, Wendy picked her arm
Wendy.
up. So instead of being a draw, that was it. And then what they did was, like, they kind of played around with the ending. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
announce the winner yet. Moolah thought she won. Wendy thought she won. The crowd had no idea. The announcers didn't know. And then it was eventually when the Fink, Howard Finkel's like, the winner of this contest,
Hmm.
and drum roll please, new
Hmm.
champion. That's how it was announced. So that part I like, how they announced the win. But yeah, that roll up, which, and during a time of where women's wrestling really wasn't all that spectacular. I mean, it's nothing like what it is today.
Yep.
But
Yep.
um, yeah, back then to do such an odd ending, especially to end Moolah's epic run, little interesting, a little weird, even for the
Yeah.
80s for me.
So you know the funny part is when the match is over, you see Cyndi Lauper going at it with Captain Lou, and she say, "No, no, 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 we won, we won." And meanwhile, the announcer already said, "And the winner and new champion," and Cindy still say, "No, no, no, we
She was
won, we won."
she was still
We won.
kayfabing it. Yep. No, she didn't know when to stop. But hey, look, I didn't know how much they clued her in. Who knows? So, and yeah, and it was a weak German suplex with a interesting aftermath. But hey, look, it got the belt on Richter, so it did what it had to do, I guess, at that point.
Oh man, it was definitely something else, man.
And also for now, keep in mind, especially for those who never saw these videos before, the matches, and they mention this actually at the end of the tape, the matches were edited. So, they I mean, clear cuts. You can see apps. I mean, they don't hide it. They're clear cuts,
Yes.
which is fine. They have
Yes.
to fit it onto a cassette. But
Mhm.
for the 80s, even for a championship match, I felt like this was a long match for women back then. This was I don't remember the exact time, but it was definitely drag out fair. How about after the match, after Richter is given the championship, when Moolah drop kicks the referee? He
Yeah,
tosses
double
him out
drop
the
kick.
ring.
Yeah,
I don't think he knew that was coming. Like,
nope,
total shoot.
nope. He did it. If he knew that was coming, he is a great actor. He is and I don't think nobody could act that well. Oh
Oh.
man, that was something else. So now we're moving on to match 3. Okay, we got Gorilla Monsoon versus Baron McKell, and to be honest with you, let's be honest. That match wasn't what really mattered in
It
that
was a
situation.
setup.
Yeah,
It was
it was
Yep.
afterthought for what was really
Baron
now.
Sakuna, yeah.
Yep.
It was actually the match ended up getting, it didn't even end, actually. It just kind of just stopped. For the lead-in, which would be 2 Hall of Famers.
Yep.
Nowadays 2 Hall of Famers who stepped into the ring.
Mm-hmm. And the part that really got me when Muhammad Ali stood up, you seen that look on his face that he had. He had this weird, crazed look like
He
is it
See, he's an early example of a celebrity who got it, I think. He was huge into wrestling. In fact, he even said he patented himself in the boxing ring after Gorgeous George. So, that kind of, not flamboyant, but just that, the way he acted in the ring,
cocky,
the
arrogant?
exact,
Yep.
that's what it is. So he definitely got it, I think. And again, they might to pull the curtain back even on this show here with us. They probably clued him in on it. You know what I mean? So he probably had an idea what's going on, because let's face facts, mid 70s, and you got this deemed the greatest athlete of all time, Muhammad Ali in the ring, and he's kind of acting like the heel in this.
There you go.
And
Yep.
he gets, he gets beat up, for lack of a better term, by Gorilla Monsoon. And I always, that, looking back on it now, very, very interesting to see, for him to let him be that exposed, if you will. This,
Right.
I mean, again, I don't know his career. I honestly don't follow Muhammad Ali. I didn't follow his career. So I don't know where he was in his career in 76, but still to let that, happen to him, to get picked up, to be made look like a fool, and then to be put in an airplane spin.
Mhm.
That's huge, I think, and a lot of trust for Ali in the WWE and Gorilla.
Which is true. But you also have to remember back then it was all about protecting the business. Like Vince did not even care if you was an early version of Mike Tyson, the killer.
Mhm.
If you get into an altercation, you better beat Mike Tyson. Because and to be honest with you, nobody would even bat an eye if you lost a real fight with Mike Tyson. They'd be like,
100%.
That's Mike Tyson. You're kind of supposed to lose.
In about a month, he's going to murder a human being live on Netflix, Mike Tyson.
Oh man, I got my fingers crossed.
Oh, I'm not joking. I literally think Jake Paul is going to die in that boxing ring during that fight. But again, that's for another time. We'll talk about
That's
that.
another.
But yeah, no, to see, Ali in this predicament, looking back on it, well, I wasn't, I was 76, so I wasn't around yet, but, to see it like live, if you will. But yeah, no, very, very interesting to see Ali do that. And then the promo afterwards that Gorilla Monsoon cut, on him again, just like who is this guy? I don't care who he is.
Man, it was like, first of all, the match with Gorilla Monsoon and Baron didn't even
Yep.
last 30 seconds.
No,
So
not at all.
so Ali comes right in there. He does his stick, pointing at him, throws a couple of jabs, left, right, left, right. Then you see Gorilla just standing there like batting him away like a fly. Like,
Yeah,
come on, are you sick kidding me? Come on,
yeah.
get out of here. Then he finally grabs him, hoists him up in a fireman's carry, and spins him around 360 and just drops him on the ground.
Famous airplane spin. Yep.
Yep,
Forget. And
yep,
he was
yep.
just so cool and collected when Vince interviewed him afterwards, immediately afterwards, where and actually you can kind of hear also the beginnings of Gorilla Monsoon as an announcer. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch, stuff like that he would do. So, and I think it was definitely Gorilla protecting the industry as well a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, after all, Gorilla did have, I think at that time, yeah, definitely at that time, he had investments as far as like him and his father, Vince's father. They
Yeah.
was partners, I believe. I don't want to switch it up,
Well,
but
not only
were they?
partners. Well, again, this is as per the documentary, the Netflix
That's pretty.
documentary. I believe Gorilla was set to take over, not Vince Jr., but Vince Sr. was going to sell to Gorilla Monsoon. And obviously history, we know what happened from there. But
Yeah,
yeah, no, that Gorilla would have, and I can see him doing that. I can see him taking over. But yeah, no, he was next in line. So, but I guess he didn't have
yeah,
enough cash.
yeah. Hey, listen, all he had to do is Vince missed that one payment.
That's it, that last payment. But my gosh, he paid it. Oh
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. All right. So now we're moving on to match four on the tape. It was Superfly, Jimmy Snuka versus Bobby Bass. And again, a squash
Yes.
match.
Yep.
This was kind of like a build up. I don't even think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that match, I was going to say it was a build up of what was to come after that. But to tell you the truth, I think they just pieced that match together. Like they just grabbed that match from the past and then they just put it together just for you to see a profile of what Jimmy Snuka is,
I think you're
just as a
exactly right.
build up.
You're
Yeah,
exactly right. You're exactly right. Because you're right. It was a jobber match.
yeah.
And it's Snuka doing all of his tricks and trades and everything like that. So you're exactly right. It's kind of introduce, if you will, people to him, which then
Mhm.
led to the infamous Piper's Pit.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The coconut job.
Oh man, iconic, so iconic. And we get the full, because back then it wasn't iconic yet. So, and we get the full Piper of most of the Piper's Pit. Afterwards all you saw was just a coconut spot. But here you get the whole thing. And I always found it funny, even back then. They do the interview and Piper's being Piper, being, classic Roddy Piper, hits him with the coconut, somehow cracks a coconut over Snooker's head, which they've, sworn up and down that, that was a coconut. And those things are tough. Then afterwards, like when Piper runs off, Snook is like banging on the door, like he doesn't know how to open a door, trying to get at Snooka. I always found that funny.
The one and I was a huge Piper fan. That's how I started off doing the talk shows thing. Mega Piper fan. You know what got me? And I realized if you check Piper's history, anybody that he came on the show, they got it automatically. They knew that they was being insulted by the man
Yep.
and they was ready to attack him. But Snooker just stood there, right? And Piper let him have it, let him have it, let him have it. And what does Snooker say after that? After all that verbal abuse? Are you making fun of me? I was like, oh no, no, I'm not making fun of you. Oh no.
I'm just throwing coconuts and pineapples and bananas at you, whatever. It's the 80s. You got away with that. So
It was like nothing left to do but to crack him over the head with a coconut. It's like, all right, you know
basically,
what? You don't get the verbal, now you're gonna get the physical.
party over.
So, oh man. So pretty much that match is the setup for the introduction between what you just mentioned, the infamous Piper's Pit with the coconut right to the head of Superfly Jimmy
Yep.
Snuka. Then we go fast forward, then we go into an actual match as far as with Snuka and Piper. That match was all over the place.
That was a
It was
wild
it was
match. Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a crazy match. Um, as far as to me, Piper lost. Piper won that match, but it was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting in the way they decided who
Yes.
was going to win and how it was going to be done, because Snooker went for his move, his splash. Piper moved out the way and he fell right on top of the rope. The realistic part of it just had a sense of realism to it.
No,
Like
you're right.
it could happen. It could happen. That could
You're
happen.
and that's what you needed back then. That's what you did back then. And first of all, to say that this was a wild match between two of the wildest characters in professional wrestling,
Yep.
it was such a fun match to watch. And I going into this, watching the video again to do this show, I forgot who won. So going into it, I legitimately forgot. Like, oh, I wonder who went over. But in my head, I'm like, Piper had to go. Piper really didn't lose,
Mhm.
and Piper really never got pinned. So I tried to figure out like how it had to be like either a DQ or I figured it was going to be a DQ or a count out. But it was so odd because I feel like the ref almost started counting the 10 like as soon as Snuka like jumped. Like the ref is already going 1, 2, 3. He's not even technically out of the ring yet. He's still hanging over the top rope. So, but again, you didn't question it back then.
It
So
was it was one of those. Piper got protected as far as that,
yes,
never got beat, never got his shoulders pinned, and Snooker got protected because he busted Piper wide open.
he did.
So it was,
He did.
yeah. So there was color
And
in that match and everything.
a great moment in the match, which again back in the '80s, no one ever saw it. A botch did happen during that match. If you
Mhm.
remember, there was a point where Snuka was gonna Irish whip Piper in the ropes, but back then those ropes were so loose back in the
Yeah.
'80s, and when Snuka kind of pushed Piper into the ropes to bounce him off of it, Piper's head flipped out underneath, and his neck got caught in the top. So Snuka was about to whip him, but again, putting rose-colored glasses on, you didn't realize that back then. You just figured, oh, what happened? Clearly it was a botch, but you didn't know that back then. And
Co-
going back and watching it was so interesting to see.
the commentators, I forgot who was commentating for that
It
match.
was it was
Was it
months.
Gorilla Monsoon
Was
or
it Monsoon? It was definitely Monsoon. I don't remember if
Mean Gene?
Mean Gene was
Oh,
with him. I can't remember.
right.
Um,
But I remember what was said during that particular moment. It was like, oh man, what a interesting clothesline, or a different something. They
yeah,
played it off as far as
totally
saying
played
that
it
was
off.
a new variation of a clothesline. And I
And
was like,
that's what was good with Monsoon was able to do that on the fly, even if it was something that just like what happened here. He was able to kind of flip it around. You're exactly right.
oh man, oh man. Now here was an interesting one. I call it a slightly little gold mine on this particular tape. Match 5. We're talking about Black Tiger versus Cobra.
Yes.
Um, Now, first of all, you're a connoisseur of championship belts. You know where I'm heading at. You
I
know where
think
I'm
so.
going.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, this was for the vacant junior heavyweight championship. How many times have you ever heard? I know during my time watching this live and during the 80s and stuff like that, I don't remember not one time hearing about a junior heavyweight championship belt. Have you ever heard about a junior heavyweight championship belt?
Only once when I was watching the Best of WWE Volume 1 with the Cobra versus Black Tiger for the vacant championship. Um, no, I don't remember hearing about it regularly growing up as a kid. Certainly it was never really referred to again. You know what I mean? So, but and it never really caught that lore like the infamous Rio de Janeiro tournament for the Intercontinental Championship. It really never really caught that. But with that being said, though, I am as we speak, I did just pull up on Wikipedia the history of the WWE Junior WWF. I'm sorry, folks, Junior
Uh-huh.
Heavyweight Championship, and I'm trying to figure out where. So, because there is actually a lineage of
Really?
the junior heavyweight championship going back to 1965 actually.
Oh
Let me see if I
wow.
can pull up some information here. Let's see. So it was a championship that was recognized by both the WWF and
Hmm.
New Japan for wrestlers of smaller size. The title existed from 65 to 85. I'm getting this all off of Wikipedia. The in 84, excuse me. In 94, The WWF Championship belt was used as a trophy for the first ever Super J Cup winner, which was Wild Pegasus, who we all know who that ended up being, and we shall not name him. So it looks like they used it as a trophy. There were 20 reigns over 11 champions.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty interesting. The first champion was Paul DeGallis. Not sure, but okay. And then the final champion was actually the Cobra. That match was basically the final match because then they basically. Oh no, I'm sorry. No. Oh wow. No, I'm sorry. I misread this. It changed hands a couple of times after that match that we watched from MSG. So.
Well,
Yeah.
the main event question is the Junior Heavyweight Championship belt. You gonna get it? You gonna buy it? You gonna get it?
You know what?
Buy it?
That's a heavy maybe because I never really looked into it before, but it's a pretty this one. I don't know which iteration this is, but it's a gorgeous looking title. It almost looks like the NWA Junior Heavyweight Championship a little bit, and it says WWF on it, Junior Heavyweight Champion with 2 rubies, attached on the front. Ah, man, I can't be affording all these titles. But this might be something. This might be something I'll look into.
There you go. There you go. So the match, okay, the reason I said it was a little gold mine, because you've seen certain moves on that match that was ahead of its time, if you ask
100%.
me. Yeah, it was definitely ahead of its time. You've seen a little bit of high flyer moves and stuff like that. Sort of like the lucha libre style of wrestling, almost to that effect.
The Garden, New York, and New York has gotten, they had all, the New York wrestling scene for WWE was really all about getting the wrestlers for the particular demographic. Bruno was the Italians, Pedro was the Puerto Ricans. You had everyone else you can name, for different,
Yep.
Fuji, for the Asians and everything.
Back in the 80s, Vince
that's what it's all
covered
about.
every nationality.
Hutski. Yeah, exactly. We can sit here and name everybody. But it was also, just that hard hitting style. This is one of the first times, if not the first time I remember seeing wrestling like this. And nowadays, this entire match would be taken for granted, and people would probably yawn at this match nowadays. If you have a wrestling fan today who's never seen this before and you show them this, they're probably not going to be impressed. But with me and you, when we were growing up, this was what I remember. And again, going back and watching, I remember being so impressed with the suicide dive through the ropes, and it wasn't even that pretty. But it was still, a tope suicida through the middle rope, and the place like exploded. Even Monsoon got like, oh my God, what a maneuver. So yeah, this was a different time and definitely something new for the fans, and they enjoyed it.
I was about to ask you what were your thoughts on the crowd participation for that particular match. Do you think they started not getting it, but was this something that you could see them bringing it back?
They got into it. I mean, I don't think they really brought it back because you really didn't see much of this wrestling lit afterwards. It might have impressed the fans, but it didn't impress Vince, I think, and he's the one, unfortunately, who was booking everything. But still, to have two mass wrestlers, I feel like they were billed from the wrong locations. I feel like the Cobra should have been from England and Black Tiger should have been from Japan, but they had flipped that. But the crowd definitely got into it. They might have enjoyed it though as a one-off. Maybe, because I'm not. Again, I enjoy to watch it, but it's not my style of wrestling. I'm more into, personally speaking, like the heavyweight division, if you will, and the big guys and stuff like that. But definitely fun to watch. And for the 80s, it was definitely mind blowing. This was December of '84, and December 28th of '84. Wait a minute, was this the same night when Sheik won the title? Now I'm curious. I can't look it up that quick.
Shoot. Actually, yeah. I gotta hey, listen, yeah, this is Coliseum home. This is Coliseum culture worthy. Oh, Coliseum connection worthy right here.
Yes.
Here's a story I got for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about this one since you brought up the Iron Sheik. Do you know the backstory between the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund?
None that come to mind.
The Iron Sheik did not want to wrestle Bob Backlund because back in the days, and I was speaking about that with Rugged Ronnie Garvin earlier today. Back in the early '80s and even '70s, a guy did not want to lose to in the ring to somebody that he felt like cannot whoop him in real life. If you can't beat me in real life, I'm not going to let you beat me in the ring. I don't care if it's a storyline, if it's a work or whatever the case. It doesn't make sense. So here's a little backstory. And when you watch the video, you're going to be like, what the? Tony Atlas, our good friend Tony Atlas is telling
I
us.
love Tony Atlas. The gem that is Tony Atlas. I love him.
He was talking about how there was that match where he didn't want to give up. Um, he didn't want to lose as far as I think Backlund didn't want to lose to Iron Sheik. And Iron Sheik was a legitimate tough guy.
Oh, 100%.
But Backlund,
100%.
but Backlund too was legit
Yep.
as well too. So, but Backlund didn't want to lose at that time to Iron Sheik. So Iron Sheik had him in the camel clutch.
Yep.
You see Iron Sheik looking at Skolden. Skolden throwing in the towel, that was legitimate because he looked at him and he said, "What are you gonna do now? Because if you don't throw in the towel, I will break his neck for real."
Really?
Yeah, and Skolden looked
Wow.
and threw in the towel, and I think they had beef. They had issues after that match. But what he didn't know was like, dude, you could have been you could have been crippled.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Never heard that one before. That's right.
Yeah.
I need to correct myself. I apologize. Iron Sheik won the title in December of '83. I don't know why I was thinking because this was '84 when this match, the junior heavyweight title match. But yeah, no, that's a wild story. I never heard that one before.
Yeah. So going back to the Cobra wins with a maneuver off the top rope. I had to add in my Vince McMahon. What a maneuver! What a maneuver!
He had no idea what was going on. That was the best. And so everything was a maneuver.
Oh man. All right. So
but that was also real quick before we move on. Talking about maneuvers, I don't think anyone saw a surfboard. The first time probably anyone in the Garden or let alone in North America saw a surfboard. That was done this way. And again, Monsoon didn't know what it was, but he rolled with it. He tried to roll with it. But yeah.
In hindsight, you couldn't really blame them when they
threw
in like little vague wording for certain moves that they didn't have, like maneuver.
Totally. It's just Vince overdid it. Yeah, Vince just overdid it. 1, 2, 3. No. You know how many times Vince counted 3 and it wasn't a 3 count? All right, I'll tell you this before we move on. My biggest pet peeve with something like that, like a trope, if you will, was with Earl Hebner. If you ever go back and watch, whenever Earl Hebner did a world title match, especially like if a title was going to change hands, that final count was so deliberately slow. He would do normal cadences throughout the match, but you knew, going back now watching, you knew, I mean, no, seriously, like the whole match, kick out. But here's the final one, for someone to win. And it wasn't even like he got knocked out and was like dazed. It's just what he did. Oh my God. That to this day when I watch a match and he does that, drives me batty.
That was probably his little thing that he did with the crowd.
It was totally his.
Oh man. All right. So now we're gonna move on to the skit of the video.
This is my favorite part of the video.
Mean Gina Mania. The birth of Mean Gina Mania.
Yep.
We got Mean Gene getting in shape with Hulk Hogan. First up, what do we see? We see Mean Gene in the kitchen getting ready to get in shape by having a cigar, drinking his coffee, reading the newspaper.
Yep.
And Hogan walks in on him like, "What are you doing, brother? What are you doing?" He's blowing smoke in his face.
And Gene's like, "What are you doing here at 5 a.m.? Gene, what are you doing up at 5 a.m.? Like, come on now."
Oh man.
And I love how Mean Gene has the Hulkamania shirt on and he's already got his wrists taped up. So which I think was hysterical.
Yep. Oh man. And Hogan decides to make him breakfast. What does the breakfast consist of?
Rocky style.
Rocky style, man.
3 raw eggs.
3 raw eggs. Yep.
Yeah, 3 or 5.
Yep.
And it was a
It's
shoot.
disgusting.
He downed those too. That was one take. Well, maybe not one take, but you
Yeah.
saw it. He drank those 3. Those are legit eggs.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. So then, moving on. Now it came to the scene where Hogan and Gene are running in the park. It looked like, what was that? That was a baseball field or a park? I think it was a.
It
Was
was
it
a
a base?
park. It looked like it was a park because it was water there, so it was some sort of
Uh,
lake or something like that. Well, they were in Minnesota. The match was in Minnesota, so I
hmm
guess it was the Twin Lakes maybe or whatever they call them up there. It was Twin
hmm
Cities. It's some sort of lake is up there. I don't
hmm
know, but no, it was
Well,
definitely they were running around. Those '80s shorts that I don't know how anyone wore back then. The knee high socks. They were both rocking them, and Gene didn't deserve to be rocking them. Look, this is coming from a
oh,
guy who doesn't deserve to be rocking them. So,
so at that point, I don't know if you noticed in the skit, Mean Gene looks like he wanted to quit right there and
is that when he
then.
went over and was looking for a beer and a brat? When
There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Um, Afterwards, we got Hogan takes Gene to the gym. Okay. This is the funny one. Mean Gene's doing the sit up. So
yeah,
he's doing the sit up, right? And he's shaking his head no. Every time he got up, he's like,
yeah.
no, no, no.
He wanted nothing to
So,
do with this.
yep. That was a classic one.
Yeah, the
Um,
the bandana, the headband, the sweatband was around his neck and fell off the
around
top of
his
his
neck.
head. Oh my gosh.
I
Right.
mean, you got to give him credit for a ring announcer. He was kind of in shape.
Oh
He
no, he
looked
was
fairly decent.
fine. Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
he
fine.
looked fairly.
Yeah. To this day, though, I wish I'd never ever seen the lead into this match. Like what caused this match to happen. You know what I mean? Like what got
Uh,
Mean Gene into the ring. That's something I would love to find. I've never seen that before.
Backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's something only Hogan would be able to tell. And not for nothing, Hulk Hogan's stories lately have been a little
I
flim
love
flam.
Hulk Hogan's my number one. I love Hulk Hogan. I'll love him till the day I
Yeah.
die. But I don't know what he's talking about lately with some of his stories. Oh man.
Ay, ay, ay. What are you gonna do?
Uh,
um, so now Hogan and Gene are running up and down the stairs. That's that scene. They running up the stairs together. And Hogan is saying, "All right." He puts Mean Gene on his back, and he's telling Mean Gene, "Now it's your turn."
oh my.
Shockingly so.
He going.
Shockingly,
He carried
he
him.
did it. He carried him.
Couple
I was
couple
shocked.
flight. Yeah, couple steps. Not flights, but a
Yeah,
couple
that's what I'm
steps.
saying. Hey,
And I hate to say it, and I'm going to try and be as clean with this as possible. So forgive me. You know, I know it's a PG. We're going to try and keep this PG, but that of Hogan being carried by Mean Gene, just the audio of it. Boy, when you listen to that out of
oh,
context,
yeah.
Hulk, 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 no, come on, Gene, one more, Hulk. Wow. Out of context, that does not work. I'm sorry. No.
Listen, I know. Trust me. Oh man. Oh man. I know exactly what you're
Oh
talking
man.
about. But then we moved on to the next scene. It was the crab walk. That actually used to be my favorite routine back when I was younger. We used to do that in gym class.
All
Like
right.
our gym teacher used to have us go from one end of the gym to the other, holding the person's leg and then doing that whole crab
Yep.
walk thing. So that he finally makes it. Gene goes up and down the stairs with his hands, and then Hogan gives Gene a pep talk, that motivational pep talk, like, "Yeah, we gonna do it, brother. You did it. This is the."
Is that after the kind of the Rocky homage, if you will? Yep, going up the
There
stairs.
you
Yep.
go. There you go. There you go. Which leads to them jogging up the stairs and together in a Rocky Balboa form. Yep. Um, then they shoot a promo, which I
Mhm.
love talking about what they're gonna do to Mr. Fuji and George the Animal Steel
Yep.
and stuff. And then we're talking about the match itself. Going into
Yes.
the match itself.
I've always enjoyed this tag match. I really have. It's always been a favorite of mine. Mostly because of Mean Gene. Like, you know, you didn't know it back then, but this is such a haha, as they call it nowadays, a haha match, if you will. I mean, there was some serious, if you will, moments. But I talked about in the beginning of the episode here, how about like Hogan with his alternate colors. Here he's
hmm
rocking like baby blue tights, which
Blue.
is like the only time I've ever seen him rock baby blue tights as champion. And you also mentioned real quick my my love of professional wrestling belts. And this match, a little near and dear to my heart, because the belt that Hogan walked in with this one is the classic 85, as they call it, the 85 Hogan belt. And for you and your audience, I do want to show off part of my collection. I do have a replica of the Hogan 85.
Wow. Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
one
Look at
one of
that.
my
And the
favorites.
inscriptions and the inscriptions on the side too.
Yeah,
And it had the belts back then, it had almost like a silver semi-gold look to
yeah,
it.
no, it was I guess zinc maybe or something.
Zinc. Okay.
But it was definitely silver. Yeah, now, even though they called it gold, yeah, the gold.
Right.
You're
Right.
right. A lot of it was silver. The look of it. But this or maybe brass. Really wasn't gold. Some of the belts were brass, like the very famous IC title that Savage carried. Was
Mhm.
brass, and then Savage tried cleaning it with Brasso or something, and actually ended up like tarnishing the belt. If you look
Yeah.
at pictures, there's actually like it's almost like the brass is coming off that
Oh
Intercontinental
wow.
title. It's actually called, I think it's called the Brasso title because of that.
Oh wow.
And
Oh
I think
wow.
yeah, I
Didn't know
think
that.
yeah, Savage had it, and then Steamboat had it, and they might have replaced it when Honky Tonk Man won. But this is one of my favorite that I got. Again, it's a replica, but it's definitely one of my favorites.
Wow, classic. Classic. And you see the inscriptions on the side of the
Yeah,
belt too. Like
former
hmm
former champions listed around there, and then they actually had Hogan's name on the
hmm
bottom there. So
hmm
yeah, no, this is definitely one of my favorite. I think the coloring might be a little. Some other parts might be supposed to be blackened in, which they didn't do, but I'm not going to complain too much. So
hmm
this is a beaut.
hmm Now, I don't know if you remember for that match with Mean Gene and Hogan. First, you see Mean Gene standing there like this, and Hogan just it looked like he did with
Yes,
one finger, just ripped the whole shirt.
you
He's
would have had
coming.
Gene trying to pull on it and then going
Yeah,
nowhere with it, but yeah, Hogan just took that right off.
that belt looked like it could swallow Mean Gene Okerlund. I
Oh
tell you,
yes,
when he
that's
walked
right.
in with it.
I
Yep,
forgot Gene walked in with the belt. Yeah, that's what I
yep,
was talking.
yep,
Like Hogan kind of. This was a day off for Hogan. He
yeah,
had fun.
yeah,
You could see he had fun in this match.
yep, yep. And then the part when Gene is pumping up before the match, so he's throwing his
Yeah,
fist. Vince McMahon says, "Uh-oh, Mean Gene, don't hurt yourself."
don't fall over or something like that. 100%. Even Vince had a ball with this one. When he
Yeah.
booked this, you knew this was just a blast. Like this was a pop in the back for the boys. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Oh yeah. So let me ask you, back then, could that bit would have been a well, it's Hogan is involved, so it's anything with Hogan was a main event back then. Would you have paid back then? I think pay-per-view and I think $50 was a lot, 50 or the $45 range. That was a lot of money back then, as
It
far
was
as
a
for
lot of money.
pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Um, would you have paid, let's say, an event like that? Would you have paid $25, $30, and would have been happy with that pay-per-view event and that being the main event? Would you have been happy with that back then?
That's a good question because there's a time and a place for everything. You know what I mean? And maybe like if it was like a shorter, like remember when they started doing the in your houses and they were only 2 hour
Yep,
shows, but they were
yep,
also cheaper than a pay-per-view.
yep,
If they
yep.
did something like that with this, I probably wouldn't have a problem. Um, I was also four, so I probably didn't have much of
Right,
a choice in it. But
right.
but like if it was myself now, I probably, I mean, depending on the fandom, honestly, I probably would have pulled the trigger on that, and I think I would have had fun watching this, even in full kayfabe mode, being like Gene Okerlund in tights, no less, like it wasn't even long tights; they were traditional short tights.
That's
So
what I said. He wasn't that bad. He
he
wasn't
wasn't
that bad.
bad, but you also got to give him credit. That's a lot to go out when you never did that before. That's a lot to do. So now let me get your question on this because you always had those matches when managers were involved. And that's how I see this. Kind of like when a manager was involved.
Mhm,
When Heenan wrestled, you knew he was getting squashed. You know what I mean?
mhm, mhm.
Slick, I don't think I've ever seen Slick wrestle. The
No,
few times Jimmy Hart wrestled, he'd weasel his way to a win. No pun intended
King
for
of the
Bobby Heenan.
King of the Battle Royal, King of the
Yes,
Battle Royal.
absolutely right. Yeah. But Fuji was like the only manager. Forgive me. I don't. You know what? He might not have been managing just yet at this point. I don't remember if he was a manager.
Mm.
But even later on, like the match that I always go back to is the handicap match from WrestleMania 5 with Fuji. Fuji and the
Mhm.
Powers of Pain versus Demolition for the tag titles.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And Fuji was the only manager who actually, I think, was like more dangerous in the ring during that time than being a manager. Like he legit would be like, "Oh, you're going up against Fuji? You know, now there might be a problem." Where every other manager, you're like, "All right, this is just a throwaway match." But with
Yeah.
Fuji, he gave it. He they all give it their all. But Fuji really tried to, because he's a former
But
tag
give
team
it to.
champion, so he has the history.
Yep. Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah.
but yeah, I don't remember if he was. I don't think now that I think about it, I don't think he was a manager maybe yet. And the rare times I remember seeing George Steele as a heel.
Mhm.
But yeah, this was such a good pairing. This was four wrestlers that fit the mold of this match. Even with Hogan involved, fit the
Yep.
mold of this match.
Yep. Oh yeah. 100%. 100%. And then the funny thing is, the time when Mean Gene got tagged in there, there was a time that they both gave each other. Hogan did a good move, and then him and Mean Gene gave each other a high five, and Murphy was like, "Go in there, that's the tag." And
Yep.
Mean Gene was like, "What?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm
What?"
sure, I'm sure the idea was it's like a glorified handicap match, and then Gene accidentally gets tagged in. Like, this wasn't part of the plan, Hulk. Like, what
Yep.
are we gonna do? So that was that I love that part. That was a great
Yep.
part in the match.
Oh yeah. And you would think normally when Gene would come in there, it would be when the guy is totally out of it,
Yep.
completely on his back and stuff. But to see him in there with a George the Animal still up and ready to go,
Yeah. Look
and
out.
then you see Gene set up like
Yeah.
start
Totally.
doing this. I started laughing. And then he runs in between the legs and then goes and tags Hogan right
Yep.
out. Gene probably spent like 30 seconds in there. He
No,
spent
he
30
wasn't in,
seconds
and he
probably.
wasn't meant. Yeah, he wasn't meant to be long, but he
Yeah,
wasn't in there
yeah,
that long.
yeah. So then it's what happens is me Fuji's in there. Hogan and Fuji go at it a little bit. They have a little back and forth. Then tag is made to Mean Gene. Hogan's end up dropping Mr. Fuji on the
Well, actually, no. What he did
huh?
was Fuji after the tag to Gene at the end of the match. Hulk whips Fuji into Mean Gene, but Mean Gene had his foot on the rope. Foot, he had his
Right.
feet up.
Yeah.
So Fuji ran into that, and then the epic ending.
Picks him up, throws him right on Fuji, and with a little helping hand.
Yes, yeah, right. That little part. So what Hogan, and they're near the rope. So Mean Gene's covering Fuji 1-2, and then Hogan just puts his hand on Gene's rear to hold him down, like Fuji was going anywhere. That little part, and it's such a heel move, but
Yep.
like back then it was so funny and so goofy. I loved the way that match ended. I love that bit
But
when
you know
Hogan
something?
held Mean Gene down. Like, you know what?
It,
Gene's getting the win, but he still needs a little help.
right. The thing is, it fit the bill as far as for the storytelling because Mean Gene wasn't a wrestler and
Of
he was a
course.
lightweight. He was a lightweight compared to everybody.
Of
So you seeing
course.
him trying to cover any wrestler as far as in that time, you see the wrestler kick out and Mean Gene flies over the third rope, not even
Exactly.
first rope,
Yeah.
over the third rope. So
Yep.
Hogan having that helping hand, it added sort of more of that realistic
It did.
type of yeah, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And then the
Uh,
scuffle afterwards. I forgot about the
oh
scuffle
yeah,
afterwards when I
oh
started
yeah,
watching this again.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That
I
was
did
great.
too.
And again,
With
Mean Gene in the corner kicking up, into
yep.
George Steele. Yeah, great moment. And then being
Was
carried
that
around.
was that Jesse the Body Ventura down in the bottom in the corner? I believe I seen Jesse the Body Ventura.
You know what's funny? I when I was watching this back, I
Uh
thought the exact same thing. I
huh.
can't remember exactly if it was him, but it sure
Right.
looked like him.
It looked just like
Looked
him. The
like just like
blonde hair,
yeah.
bald headed.
Yep, yep.
What's up? Yep. Oh yeah.
And then the epic pose down. Mean Gene and Hogan. Come on. Come on.
Oh man, Gina Mania running wild. That's a T-shirt right there.
Yes.
That's a T-shirt. That's
Yep.
definitely a T-shirt. Oh, well, now we move on to match 7, which is teacher versus student. Found this one pretty interesting. And that was it's funny. The storytelling on this one, I feel like it was superb because in
Yeah.
match 1 between Larry Zabisco and Larry Zabisco being the teacher against his no, Larry Zbyszko being the student
Hmm.
against his teacher Bruno San Martino.
You know,
It was a very technical match. It was to the point that even Vince McMahon was saying it was a scientific wrestling match type of thing, and they was going hold for hold. Very interesting.
it
Very
was
interesting.
very, very few times that you saw, even though it was, I guess it was probably presented as an exhibition in this
Right.
fashion because it was
Right.
student versus teacher.
Correct.
And one of the very few times in the beginning of the match, it was good guy versus good guy, face versus
Right.
face. So, and that in those moments, that's where you're able to get kind of the, the catch as catch can and the scientific. We kind of saw that with in the junior heavyweight title match because neither one of them was really a heel. And after the
Right.
match, Cobra, shook Black Tiger's hands, and they
Right.
congratulate each other, whatever.
Yep.
So, yeah, leading up to and really, and for a setup, this was a pretty long match for the payoff that ended up happening in this match.
Mm-hmm. Correct. I
With
definitely
with,
agree.
with Zbyszko, spoiler alert, with Zbyszko ultimately turning heel, turning
Mm-hmm.
on his mentor, his teacher. But what was great about it is the lead up to it. That's where the story part. This is what we were talking about before we recorded. This is what I was talking about. Where nowadays it's still you need story. You need story in wrestling. It can be a 7-star match. Let Meltzer give it whatever he wants. But it's not going to mean a hill of beans if there's no story behind it. I don't care what they do in the ring. This match, with no lead into it or know what happened afterwards, this match told the story from bell to bell.
Yep.
Did
Yep.
how would you praise Zbyszko with that slow transformation from beginning of match to the end?
It went from scientific, then you see the frustration slowly building up as the match was going until it reached the point he mentally snapped. He knew that he couldn't beat his teacher. So now he grabbed the chair. Well, even before he grabbed the chair, he went into snap mode to the point that he was ramming Bruno's head to the turnbuckle and just started punching him. He did it so well that honestly, and even though it doesn't happen in wrestling even back then, I was looking for the referee to disqualify him. I don't know why. I was looking for the referee to disqualify him.
I think but ultimately the ref Zbyszko throws the ref out of the ring. So I think
Mm,
ultimately it ends up in like a DQ or so, or the match is thrown out.
mm,
But I think they were just trying to set up for Zbyszko to like attack the referee and get him
mm,
out.
mm, mm,
Yes, the like you were saying, how he gets frustrated. It was probably 3 or 4 times before he attacked
mm.
Bruno, maybe 3 or 4 times where, yeah, you saw the frustration when a move didn't go his way or Bruno got out of something. And it was just a light frustration, then and then even, and you hear Vince like, oh, Larry Zbyszko very frustrated with himself, not being able to get one over on Bruno. This played out. Any new wrestler who's trying to learn how to tell a story, this is a
Uh-huh.
must watch
Oh yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
at the end, which is worse, a steel chair or those wooden chairs? Haven't figured out yet, right?
It was a steel chair, but you see the fact that how it was done, as far as with the wooden chair and the ferociousness that he went at it with his teacher, that told the story right there.
Yep,
That
100%,
definitely told the story.
100%.
So um, now the lead up to, which was, well, even before we get to the grudge match, it
Mhm.
was the weigh in. So, and I was gonna say Zabisco and Bruno San Martino, but it was only Bruno San Martino, and that was kind of odd. I don't know if maybe they cut that part
It
or
might have been
what.
a cut. It might have been an edit. You're right. It was only Bruno. I feel like maybe like Zabisco was there and then just stormed off. But I don't know the full. I don't know the full story behind it. But you're right. This is just Bruno, the ring crew with a doctor's scale, and Vince. So
And that doctor that was in the ring, that is the infamous doctor that was called to the court.
is that him?
Yes, it was. That was him that got
Oh,
when Hogan was about to testify against Vince McMahon. That was, oh man,
I didn't
yes,
realize that
yes,
was the same doctor.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
I
As you
forgot that
start
guy's name.
connecting all the dots, you're like,
Oh my God,
okay.
forget about it. It's getting creepy. Yeah, the Netflix documentary right here.
There you go. There you go. So then, okay, so you had to weigh in, and now sets up the steel cage match. Now,
Yes.
before we even get into the match, let's talk about the steel cage. That was a young version of the Hell in a Cell, a young steel cage version of the Hell in a Cell. It,
it was cyclone fencing. You know what I mean? It was
uh
right. Yeah, basically cyclone fencing. I'm trying to. Yeah, yeah. It was just a simple cyclone fence, which that's all the. Well, remember the very, very, very first steel cage match was chicken wire. That's what
Mm.
was the first steel cage, was a chicken wire.
Oh wow.
So, and all the cage matches was this cyclone fence. In fact, really, if you think about it, Vince being Vince with that, wanted to show off something. The only reason why that famous blue steel cage was just because it looked iconic. You know what I mean?
Big
You know,
Blue.
yeah, but yeah, I love that cage. I mean, technically it was made for reinforcement for WrestleMania 2 because that's where it debuted.
Yep.
Because there's no way Bundy was going to be able to climb out otherwise. But
Yep.
those big giant squares made it easy for everyone to climb around. So,
Yep.
but otherwise you're right. Since they've gone away from the blue cage and now just have the cyclone fencing, it is what it is. And short of the roof, it does look very Hell in a Cell like.
Hmm. 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 So okay, so now they have the grudge match. One instant difference that I've noticed from the first match they had to this one: technicality out the window.
Oh,
Technicality
100%.
gets thrown out the window. Now it's a grudge match. So it goes back to the storytelling that we was talking about. Because now, if anybody that was following the first match to now, it's like, oh God, these guys hate each other,
Yeah.
and they're expecting something like this because, especially what happened in the first match with Zabisco grabbing a wooden chair, not a metal, a wooden chair, and start hitting Bruno over the head and getting color. So now you're expecting that type of animalistic type of match and technicality being thrown out the window.
And that's what a steel cage match is. It's the final match, the blow off match of a few. Now, the difference in time between these two matches is roughly 7-8 months. That first match we saw was January. This match and remember, this is also at Shea Stadium. This is the third showdown at Shea. So this was August of 1980. So there was time. So definitely Zabisco had already transitioned into that full heel mode at this
Mm-hmm.
point. But you're right. You want to compare it to something nowadays? We talked about it before we started recording. Just recently, we had the Hell in a Cell match between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. One of the best stories of the year. And the way that match, the way that feud was broken down with the blow off match, the final match, the violent match, because these two guys just don't like each other, was Hell in a Cell, and violence was brought, and it needed to be brought. Just like in this cage match between Zabisco and San Martino. This is it. This is their final match. It's the blow off match. No other way to do it than the violence of a steel cage. And it was, that what do they call it? Like beautiful violence or whatever.
Yep.
Sometimes it just, the beauty in that. Like I always say, one of my favorite hardcore matches, if you will, was Born to Be Wired. The infamous
Okay.
barbed wire match between Terry Funk and Sabu in ECW. That
Okay.
was violent. That was legit barbed wire. They all got sliced up. Sabu got his arm just torn to shreds.
Ooh, yes.
But
Is that the one that he taped himself
yeah,
back? And
because he
ay,
just
ay, ay.
cut open his bicep. But if you watch it, there's something just, I know it's weird to say, but beautiful about watching the match. It's an art watching that match,
Mhm,
even with that extreme violence. And
mhm,
the same with this, even though the violence was there, it was an amazing match to watch.
mhm, mhm, 100%. So now they going back and forth at it. Definitely no scientific wrestling skills being
Nope.
displayed at all. Um, Zabisco turns a little frustrated,
Again,
and
yep.
yeah, and starts attacking and wailing on him. But now here's the thing. They go back and forth, but now the ending. Bruno ends up walking out of the cage. It was kind of I don't know, it was kind of weird, and then it was a weird thing that happened at the end. It was like Zabisco raised Bruno's hand out of the side of
That was a
it
little.
looked like I don't
Yeah, I'm
know.
sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, but you're right.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It looked a little weird. Like Zabisco was gonna, but I think Zabisco was just kind of like just being a jerk about it. Like, you won, whatever. We're done.
Yeah,
And then Sabatino takes a swing at him anyway, so don't matter.
yeah. So that the ending to that was just so yeah, man, that was yeah. So I mean, overall, well, before we even give the rating, what was the rating for that match?
This match I really enjoyed. This one I give 4 out of 5 on this one. I love this cage match because, for that matter, it's two guys who just did not like each other, and the only way to solve this was inside of a steel cage. And the match, the match was designed for this, and it worked, especially at the end where Bruno was just throwing Zbyszko all around the cage. In fact, that's what basically got Zbyszko so incapacitated, was that final Beal into the side of the cage where Bruno was able to just walk out at that point. So yeah, I definitely give this one 4 out of 5 between the storytelling, the lead up into it, knowing the history of them, and just the fact that it was a fun steel cage. And also visually, this was at Shea Stadium, where the Mets played. So this was in a baseball stadium, and the look of it, if this was done nowadays in a baseball stadium, the entire field would be covered in seats. And for that matter, the ring would be in the middle of the field. Here, the ring, I think, is probably over home plate. I don't even think it was. It might be over the pitcher's mound. But it's weird. From the hard cam, there's no fans. It's just like the security and media, and I guess just random people working there. But when they cut otherwise to Shea, there's 50,000 people there. So it's interesting to watch, because again, most of that match you just see the outfield with no one in it. So I always thought that was fun to see as well, just from a spectator's point of view.
Oh man! And overall, what do you give this Best of the WWF Volume 1? What do you give?
Oh, I'm going to give this one. I give this one a 3.5 stars, but here's why. Uh-huh. I would have probably preferred, me being me, I would have preferred a little more Hulk Hogan, a few more Hogan matches. Looking back on it, it's really, if you look at it, really it's like a best of 1984, really. Majority of the matches are all from 84. A couple from the late 70s, and of course 1980. But they probably could have done more like in the history, like to go back, like really go back, like with the silver duct tape ropes and everything, and Backlund and Superstar Billy Graham and stuff. So just from a historian point of view, I can tell you right now, as a 5-year-old watching this, it was like 7 out of 5 stars. I love this video all the time. This was a normal rental for me.
I would give it. I'd give it a 3.5.
Okay,
3.5.
What's your
only
reasoning?
because with the Hogan, I have to admit, during being a youngster, Hogan was the main focus point. Hogan was the person that you wouldn't mind seeing over and over again. That tape would have been worn out onion thin in that part, as far as with the training segment with the Mean Gene and Hogan, and especially with the match. It's really, for me, I think would have been the training part with the Mean Gene, because that was an unusual thing that I never really seen on a continuous basis. So totally. That part I would have rewound over and over again. Probably would have tried to work out myself to it.
With the blue Hulk Hogan workout set? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for some reason, Paul Orndorff advertised.
Yeah. Oh man.
Here's the other thing, which I find now, maybe they put it on another tape. I don't remember like the release schedule or whatever of the home videos. But if this was the best of WWE Volume 1, how can they not have Hogan winning the title? Especially if all these matches are from 84. You know what I mean? So that was like so epic to have. But, look, again, hindsight's 2020. But great. This such a wonderful walking down memory lane situation. Not only just for watching this, but personally as a kid, again, I remember renting this. I don't know about you where you grow up, but I grew up in Brooklyn, and the video store that we went to, mom and pop, no Blockbuster, nothing like that.
Me too.
It was a mom and pop store, and I don't know why they did this, but for some reason, the wrestling tapes were always right next to the door to go into the the porn section. Exactly.
Oh, God.
Don't know why. That was always the case. So of course there I am, like looking at the tapes, and like I start to like, what's in there? And I got slapped, on the back of my head from my mother. I don't know why they've always done that. It's always near special interest.
Man.
But this, oh my God, I definitely rented this so many times. This whole series, that. I think there was 20 of them or something like that. So it's definitely a lot of them. So
there was a video store that I used to go to. It was located on Caton Avenue and Flatbush. It was called Carmine, Yours and Mine Video. And I used to rent all the Coliseum home videos from there. Super Tape, WrestleFest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I went to mine was on like Avenue Z in Brooklyn. And well, again, a little mom and pop. So my grandparents used to go there. We kind of took over their account. Oh, so many fun rentals of movies, especially wrestling tapes and video games. So, such good stuff.
Oh yeah. And then how about at the end of these tapes? Especially, I don't know if you noticed in volume at the end of the volume, it was the build up for the up and coming releases. They show you what was coming out in volume two,
Yeah.
the profile series and stuff like that. I used to love when they did that because that was another part of the tapes I used to watch over and over, and it
Like the
was like a
trailers.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. It was another bonus.
And some of those tapes are available. Unfortunately, this when we started talking about doing this, I tried looking up, but they're not on there. Peacock, WWE on
Mhm.
Peacock has a lot, not all of them. Does not have these best ofs, unfortunately, but they do
Mhm.
have a lot of like the Hulk
The super
Hogan.
tape.
Yep, the
Yep.
super tapes,
Yep.
definitely super tapes, WrestleFest and stuff like that.
Yep.
So Peacock is a great place to go. I hope one day they would load these videos up. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know why I
You
felt like the original WWE Network had them, but I guess not because it would have been brought over by now.
you know who just recently purchased the whole series of the best of the WWF, and just those series. It was Brother Love. What's his real name again?
Bruce Pritchard.
Bruce Pritchard. Yeah, he
Really?
purchased them from. If you notice at the end of the video, a guy by the name of Stephen Hetch. He was the owner of Coliseum Home Video, and
Oh,
he sold that volume series. I think for a couple of $1 million.
wow.
I believe. I'm not too sure
Tell me
about.
the Coliseum video is the same price as WCW? Holy cow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But good for
Yeah,
Bruce.
yeah,
All right. Maybe
yeah. So he,
he'll lend those out.
yeah, yeah, we'll see, we'll see. So, oh man, so did you enjoy yourself as the first run?
I, Lorenz, I had an absolute blast doing this. You have no idea. I've been looking forward to this. And of course, once we got started, we knew this was going to happen. We knew we were going to have so much fun doing this. And, just to do a little self promotion, if I may,
Go ahead, go
this,
ahead.
I was telling you before, this got my feet wet again, for the love of doing podcasts for professional wrestling. And I'm not sure when this is going to drop, but starting in January of 2025, I'm bringing back my podcast, Talking More Wrestling, MOHR, Talking More Wrestling, where I'm going to give my insight and my views on today's wrestling. We'll talk about some old wrestling, try and keep it kayfabe a little bit as best as possible for the new stuff. But I'm just looking forward to talking because right now, in today's day and age, wrestling is red hot. Because my luck's probably in January, it's all going to fall apart. But for now, peaks and valleys, and right now we're in a huge peak. But yeah, so be on the lookout. Everyone watching and listening right now, be on the lookout. January of 2025, talking more wrestling wherever you listen to podcasts. So looking
Oh, you
forward.
got
And
my vote.
Lorenz, I can't wait to have you on my show when I get there.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Awesome.
Oh man. So listen, hey, until we tackle volume two, best of the WWF. Yep. So listen, folks, we hope you enjoyed another one. I'm Lorenz Dean, and that says
Oh, oh my God! Stand up. Let's wrap that. Can we do that one again? Oh,
yeah, yeah,
I got
yeah.
thrown off. I
Oh
was switching
no,
up
it's
things.
fine.
Okay.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed another one. I'm Lorenz Dean, and this is,
Larry Mormon.
and there you go. And this has been another Coliseum, well, the very first Coliseum connection, and plenty more to come. Till next time, my friends. See you.